Welcome back inside the Parc Fermé F1 podcast number 760, the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, not the Saudi Arabian as I was wont to call it. This is Todd, that's right.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you
You
here.
must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what you do for me. Hey, there was a race this weekend, and you know what we do? We typically...
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's exactly what we do. Tonight, we're going to review the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. In order to do that, of course, I have to introduce my co-host tonight, which of course means...
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I'm just sitting here being bold and crazy.
Are you?
Yeah,
Bold and crazy, no doubt.
Wacky, I don't know. Something.
Bold.
I don't know. I'm getting all these messages saying, I can't wait to hear your play on the podcast. I'm not sure everyone's going to agree with me, however. So,
well, that's...
it rolls.
Yeah, that's the way it goes,
Yep.
Yeah, I got a lot of Lewis fans saying, I can't wait to hear you talk about what Max did. I got a lot of Max fans. I can't wait to hear you talk about what Lewis did.
Yep.
It's always a fine line we run. It's almost as if something controversial happened this weekend.
Yeah, or very many things, in fact.
Or very many controversial things.
Very
indeed.
controversies.
Well, we have a lot to cover, so let's jump into what we're going to cover. We're going to cover the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, the longest and fastest street circuit on the calendar. As a matter of fact, it's the second fastest track, period, and that includes Silverstone, Spa, and other greats. Only Monza is faster, and for a street circuit, it is a daunting track, Paul. A lot of blind corners, a little bit of banking, and not a lot, smidgen.
Just enough to say it has some. Yes.
Yeah, it has some banking.
Yeah,
so I want to jump in as I'm wont to do with these race review podcasts. I start off with some key elements that I thought were important to talk about. Not necessarily as a lead up to the race, just a couple of key elements came out of the race. And number one was the clarity of hindsight. That always brings a lot of realism to what you were assuming, and the clarity, it brought a lot of insight to Saturday. I felt like Max's error during quali may have cost him the title, or at the very least, the race win. And come Sunday, I'm just not so sure that Red Bull had the pace given the two average starts that he had in a row on the prime tire for Max. And then given Lewis's launch at the start, I'm kind of thinking that Max may have gotten beat to the corner anyway, had he had pole position. That's all presupposition, of course, but he didn't get beat to the corner by Bottas necessarily. Maybe he wouldn't have gotten beaten to the corner by Bottas had he been on pole. But anyway, it's difficult to know what the ultimate impact of what that Saturday quali was. But my gosh, Paul, he had an incredible lap going, though.
he did. I mean, I think ultimately that mistake didn't cost him because of what happened with the first stoppage. He ended up neutralizing anything that happened in qualifying, basically. But
Right.
it was a hell of a lap. And just overcharged the last little turn there, but it's a crucial turn, and he was on it. He was pushing it every, he was. It was. If he'd have known it, I think if maybe he did know he was up that high, because at that point you want to consolidate and don't take any risks. But maybe that's just not the way Max can do things. He doesn't normally make big mistakes such like that. He certainly hasn't for a while.
Yeah.
But the moment is a big one right now, and he's got a lot of pressure on him because he's nearly the only guy in a car that may not be as good as the other guys he's banking against, and he's trying to do everything he can to try and wrestle that car to the front, and that's kind of ultimately I think what paid the price there in that last qualifying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like you said, I think it was relatively neutralized come Sunday. So, certainly in Saturday thinking, oh man, this is, gripping and it could have just
Hmm.
cost the race, which could cost the championship. And ultimately, I think Sunday was a whole, clean slate.
Yeah.
Certainly there was a lot of discussion about Michael Massey's handling of the race. And it was the first time we've heard this bartering system and what it seemed to come across as
Yes.
a bartering system. I sort of tweeted, just kind of joking about that he used with Red Bull, with the backup of a threat of sending it to the stewards, right? And even Martin at Alpine thought that was a little strange, and he
Yeah.
hadn't heard that, and he
Two
was
grid places and a timeshare in
yeah
Venice.
yeah.
How do you like that, Christian?
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
okay.
Yeah, throw that in with a Hershey bar and a pack of Reds, you know. So yeah, I don't know, man.
We're sweetening the pot.
That's
You know.
right, right. Yeah, look, I understand. I think it was a little weird what he said, but look, effectively, what he was saying, folks, was that you went off and you kept your foot in it. You took the lead, even though you went off. We both know it. It'll get reviewed. Or look, you can just reverse the positions now. It won't
And
go
it
to
won't
review.
even go. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just, know it, I know it. He went off, kept his foot in it, took the lead, gained an advantage. What I'm saying is reverse give the position back, and we'll just stop there and not go to, and it was a little bit of a look, we both know what happened sort of thing. I think it
Yeah.
came across as like, okay, we're going to haggle this out. We're going to barter for this. So I'm offering that you go back 2 places and you give me a Hershey bar and a pack of Reds.
Yeah.
And then what do you offer? And so I think that's kind of how it kind of came across. Not how it was.
Is what became a very, very busy race for it, complicated. It was a way of simplifying a process that was bound to end up being in that fashion, right? Which is
Yeah, I
fair
think
enough.
so.
I've never heard that either, but I think
Yeah.
ultimately you knew exactly as soon as that incident happened, that's exactly what was going to have to happen, right? So
Yeah, you pretty much kind of knew that. In the end, though, it was a little difficult to come out of that race and not feeling that maybe Michael was losing a little control of that race. When he was shouting at Ron, well, Ron, I only have so many buttons. I can only push so many buttons at a time. Deal with it.
Well, it's weird. I mean, it's weird that they're verbally talking to these people, during the race, and he's also at the same time trying to manage and pay attention to what else is going on. That usually that process is not so fluid, honestly. I mean,
right.
The steward door is closed, and we'll let you in when we damn well want to.
Right.
That's at least how we deal with it in IMSA and everything. I mean, you can send messages all you like. You definitely can't call someone on the phone, and there's different people that can handle things, and but having one guy as the central communication between all the teams and the stewards, and actually be able to watch the race and comprehend what's going on to make calls like red flags, etc. I think it's a bit too much. I think it's I think the teams are going to use that.
They're going to take advantage
vulnerability, of him literally being in there with 5,000 balls flying in the air to try and push their agenda, and that's pretty obvious. That's what they do, right? And but when Red Bull accepted the penalty very quickly, I mean, obviously that meant it was good for them, because that meant Lewis wasn't actually in first place. He was in second place on the grid up too. They didn't feel too aggrieved by that whole thing. They thought maybe something good could happen for him anyway.
Yeah, I kept thinking at the time, I was thinking, man, Michael's having a hard time with this race. This is a difficult race, difficult situation. I kept thinking, there's a lot of deference that is given to the teams from Michael, and there's a part of me thinking that Max Mosley, Bernie, Charlie Whiting would not have tolerated that or even offered that kind of deference. And while rules can suck, they are definitive and they apply to everyone equally. And I think Michael is learning a very hard lesson on doing a very hard job.
It is. I think, he came in after Charlie Whiting, and, who had been there for so long, and he's kind of got to make his own way. He can't just go there and I'm just going to do whatever Charlie would have done, because who even knows what Charlie would have done, right? So he's got to find his own way. and it's a really tough position. I've done it a few times. It's in very low series. It's not a fun thing to do.
No.
There's a lot of adrenaline flowing too, and you got to make split decisions that everyone's going to call you on afterwards.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's not a pleasant place to be. But I feel like putting one guy on that spot is kind of unfair, really.
Yeah, it's a tough thing.
Yeah.
The track put on a great post-race event that, quite honestly was, it really struggled to rise above all the tension, the bitterness, and then you had the Sky Sports commentary ramping up the controversy, and that's a shame because on the balance of it, I'm kind of curious what the organizers, the race organizers and F1 thought of all the drivers saying it was too dangerous. David Croft practically calling the designers foolish for designing a track like this that they did, and other drivers, using this event to school the nation on its views on cultural issues. I understand that everyone has an opinion and is keen to voice that opinion these days. And I guess I understand that. So Paul, let me share you mine, shall I?
Okay.
Look, if you don't like the track from a serious perspective or team's perspective, you think it's too dangerous, then by all means, don't race there. Don't bring in the race. Don't race there. Or if you're a driver and you feel like it is comprehensively way too dangerous, then don't get in the car. If you feel that the nation is wrong in their positions culturally or politically, then as a series or as teams, then don't go there. Don't sign up to have a race there. If you're a driver that you're trying to make an impact, trying to make a difference, then okay, boycott it. Don't go. That's those actions are louder than words. But have the team find a replacement driver or whatever. But in the end, it is a little difficult. The series and the organizers tried to put on a great race with a very challenging circuit, to give the drivers really a challenge in this street circuit. They put on this amazing post-race event, and just about everyone pooped on it, from the commentary team, the drivers, everybody. And that's kind of a shame that everyone involved was kind of poo-pooing the whole thing. I mean, in short, if you don't like the track or the nation, by all means, don't go. But you kind of need to spare me the lectures while everyone is complaining and poo-pooing the entire race, but they all enjoy the largesse of the significant race sanctioning fee that contributes massively to the year-end prize money that everyone's feeding off of. So it's kind of, it's difficult to reconcile those things.
It is. I mean, I don't know. We've seen some of these things come up in Formula One before. It's really, I know you're saying, oh, well, just don't show up. Well, a guy doesn't show up, he's breached his contract, he's losing his drive.
Right.
And,
you've got all those.
I mean, it's just not gonna happen, right? No. I mean, it's way more easier said than done. And when you push to it, I mean, as we saw, with the big lockout, FOCA war, and the, people playing the piano and sitting it out, and then somehow the teams got in there and started pulling their drivers out, saying if you don't show up tomorrow morning, you can lose your drive. And it's like, practicing for the Olympics for 20 years and then being told, you can go or not go. It's like your whole life has been dedicated to being this point. So I don't know if it's fair to say that they should just not do it. It's the governing, everyone should have gone in eyes open, knowing where they were going to race, like 2 years ago, right? When was this Grand Prix announced? It's not a surprise. So if you had a lot of misgivings, then technically you should have done them back then before it even became something,
right?
Rather than as say, I mean, everyone's got a right to say what they feel.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, make
when
your
they
point.
feel it,
That's
and say and make a point. It's okay. So I don't want to get too involved in that side of things, because I think everyone has a right to say what they want, but you have a right to say at a time to stop, the event happening at all. If it was that's my point. Bigger mark.
Then if it's a major issue for drivers, teams, everybody, then just don't go.
Problem is everyone's divided, right? I mean, people divided on the track too. I mean, maybe some people were saying it's dangerous, and then you have other people getting out and say, "Wow, this track is such a challenge, both physically and mentally."
Right.
And they seem to enjoy driving the track. So I'm not really sure. Do we want another Tilke track? No. It's something to come up with a race and a track and a layout that's actually unique to something that's happened before. And this one was, and it was a challenge. And, from day one, first practice, I'm like, whoa, okay, the three long left-handers followed by the right, and they ended up being turn 21 was the one that really got Leclerc and Schumacher. It's like, I was like, wow, that car's, if it goes, it's going big time, and that's where the first one's going to happen. But these are supposed to be the best drivers in the world, and you got to be up for the challenge, and it's it. I think once again, they do track inspections. There's a Formula One Drivers Association. They want to go look at the track. You tell me it's dangerous before we start putting on the race, rather than in the middle of a race and start making these big accusations. Like, everyone put their stamp for approval on it.
That's my point. If you had to know it was a super fast street circuit and blind corners in the design phase, you had to know that there was issues with some of the drivers, whether they were cultural or whatever they might be, then don't go. But you all went, and you're going to have divided opinions, and people are going to share their opinions, but it's not, it is what it is, in that case. So anyway, I kind of thought that was difficult because apart from all of the other, noise around the issue, I mean, the circuit, I thought visually was really nice. I thought it was an incredibly difficult circuit to drive. And there is certainly an element of danger to it for sure. And then the whole post-race thing was just, stunning with all the drones and the fireworks and the light show, and the whole stage and everything was quite impressive. It really was.
It's no Paul Ricard, is it now?
No, it's not.
Thank God.
A lot of pomp and circumstance. And so anyway, I thought they put on a decent show. All right, let's talk about the race. Let's get into the race. Now, I'm going to do something incredibly unorthodox in our race review. And some of you may not like it, and apologies. Normally, we go team by team. I talk about both drivers. But since the two drivers were sort of linked, I'm going to start off talking about Mercedes and Red Bull jointly, Lewis and Max. So we're going to talk about Lewis and Max first, and then we're going to talk Mercedes, Red Bull. We'll talk about Valtteri and Sergio. All right. So let's start off with Lewis and Max. So Lewis and Valtteri had good starts at the beginning, looked set to control the race, and kind of looked like they were heading to a smooth win and control, running smoothly, 1-2, even to a point where Valtteri was saying, tell Lewis to pull out a little, even a little more, to give me a little gap here. I don't like running this close to Max. Would like to prefer to get that gap out. And they're, okay, we'll tell Lewis. And Lewis, pick it up. All right, fine. I'll pull out the gap a little bit. They really did look in control at that point until the first yellows came out. So we're going to talk about the red flag restart number 1. So I'm not going to argue about the red flag rule, folks, and I'm not going to sit here and bellyache about it because it is the rule. It is what it is. It's benefited Lewis before at Imola, at Monaco. It's benefited Max here. Some people get the benefit of it. Some people horribly get caught out. I get it. And you may or may not like that rule. And I've seen a lot of people, saying, oh, it's horrible, it's terrible. It is what it is. That's the rule. And Red Bull's gamble was a good one. And so, they kept Max out, and then the red flag came out. He got to change his tires, a free tire change. That looked like a great gamble, but his restart wasn't great. And Lewis ran into the corner with him. Lewis, hit the apex. He's going to come off those brakes. He's going to trail out wide. On the exit of that, you're going to run Max out of road, as you would if I was Lewis. That's exactly what I would have done. I would have ran Max out wide, and that's exactly what he did. Now, Max didn't take his boot off the throttle, Paul. He ran into the runoff area and came out, full tilt over those curbs and took the lead just long enough. He had the lead just long enough for the second red flag to come out. But at that point, this is where the bartering and haggling over reversing position. At that point, Lewis was given the spot back that Max had gained an advantage by cutting the runoff and taking the lead, which you can't do. And at that point, Paul, that's what happened. So that's where Michael said to Jonathan Wheatley, you know, what I'm offering is to reverse it. Michael got a little confused because he forgot about Ocon being there, right? So, you know, anyway, they reversed it. So that first move into turn one, that's kind of how I saw it. You know, I felt like Lewis, went into the corner, had the right to the corner on the inside, and of course he tracked out wide and took Max out wide and off the track, and that's what you do.
Yeah, I mean, an outside pass is a tricky one to do, and elbows out. He didn't run him off the track. I mean, he didn't. Obviously,
Just
Lewis
ran out
didn't
of
run
road.
off the track. He had his elbows out. He took a little bit more on the right side than probably would do it for an ultimate line, but he's got every right to do that going into the corner. Max knew that he would probably try that, probably hoping for something different, but you got to mix it up, else nothing happens, right? So Max gave it a go. I don't hold anything against Lewis for running Max out there. I think that's fine. I don't blame Max
Paul,
for trying.
Let me interrupt you real quick. To that
Okay.
point, you're coming down in the inside, and I think you make a really good point. So Max is there, or Lewis is there. He's got the right to the corner. He's on the inside. He's going to take that corner. There's plenty of room around that outside.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Max, as a driver, Paul, you don't know what could happen. Maybe Lewis could cook the corner a little bit. Maybe he could get it wrong. You're going to go in and test it out.
Yeah, you got to
you?
put the pressure on. Yeah.
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 So
That's how things change. You
Right.
you put pressure on. Sometimes you don't have to do anything other than put pressure on to make someone make a mistake. And so as I said, if he just kind of tucks in behind and follows through, he knows exactly what he's going to get. But you try and stick it around the outside, things can change, things can happen, and that's why you got to give it a go. And yeah, he went off and took the lead, and that wasn't his place to take, so he should rightly have given it back. Absolutely. But both of them have the right to do what they tried to do, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I think all fair and love and war at that point.
Yeah. I certainly don't blame Lewis. That's exactly. Lewis is notorious for taking those apex and tracking out wide and running out of road. And that's what you do. So it was a good move by Lewis, and I think Max, he had to give it a go. Anything can happen. Put a little pressure there. Lewis can make a mistake, whatever, and it didn't work out. He ran off to the runoff area, kept his foot in it, gained a position. He can't do that. Gave it back. So now we're back to red flag number 2 and the restart. So Lewis got a good start, but keep in mind Ocon was there in the mix. Ocon was on pole for the restart. Heading up to the restart, on that first one, well, keep in mind, we'll get into it later maybe, but, the whole idea where he was hanging way back. Well beyond 10 car places. Michael Massey sort of suggesting that it was a standing restart, and that didn't apply necessarily. I'm not quite sure the rules because I haven't read them all. Maybe Michael's right. Yeah. But anyway. So
probably is, but shouldn't be, right?
It probably shouldn't be.
Even though it's a lap in the race, it's a formation lap for a standing start, so all the same rules should apply for every single standing start.
Yeah, I kind of agree, because you could really hang somebody out to dry, which Lewis did, rightfully so.
Which is why the rule's there, so not to allow that to happen, right?
Right, and if Lewis and the team know that that's not in the rules for a standing restart, then they did the right thing by slowing way down and letting Max set on cold tires, right?
Yeah, and speaking of hanging out to dry, the first stop where the Mercedes came in, obviously Valtteri was hanging way back.
Way back.
Right.
Yes.
And I was surprised nothing ever really got said about that, because he was obviously holding Max up to give.
Which you cannot do.
Right. Because he was going to stack his pit stop, and also it was going to be very handy and not allowing Max to jump ahead of Lewis either. So that's why I think it kind of, made it a no choice for Red Bull to keep going at that point, because they knew they weren't going to gain it. They had to do it. And, that when you're in those positions in the pit lane, you're looking at conditions out on the track. Is this going to be a local yellow? Is this going to go full course yellow?
Right.
You got to make split decision right then and there. I think Valtteri kind of forced them into going around, and then their hope is the medium tire stays up good enough. Right. And the other hope is that it turns to a red flag, and all they've done is gain grid position, which is exactly what happened.
Right. Yeah, they were gambling. It was a gamble, and I think you're right. I think Valtteri sort of forced him into that by going way too slow, and I was surprised that there was nothing said about that by the stewards.
Yeah.
Equally, Paul, for the restart, as they gridded up in the pit lane, Max did a practice start. at the end, which you're not allowed to do either. So the stewards didn't say anything about that either. Cheeky.
Cheeky.
So anyway, so Lewis gets a good start. Ocon's there. Lewis has got to keep his eye on Ocon. He actually hit Esteban going into turn one as they kind of got sandwiched. It was Lewis was the meat in a Max Esteban sandwich there. So Lewis, the first bang on Lewis's front wing was against Esteban going into turn one. And now, he knew Max was there, but he left enough room for the Dutchman to make a great move down the inside.
Absolutely.
And Lewis at that point had to slot into third to try to chase down Max, but it was a good move by Max.
Yeah, no, it really wasn't. It's really difficult. If you ever go in the in-car cameras and you see those first laps, and how they drive, and then you compare it to how they're driving that car 6 laps later, completely different car. With cold tires, low tire pressures, you've got to push the car, but you also can really damage the tire very easily by overdoing it. So it's very easy on cold tires to lock them up and get it all wrong there into turn one. And so, Max obviously going on the medium tire, gave him a little bit of extra grip, a little extra confidence going in there, but still, they're still kind of on tippy toes in those first few corners. So I think it was a big move by Max and a really good one, I mean, outbrake Lewis Hamilton, that's,
you've done something
to say. Yeah, you've done something. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. Well, anyway, Lewis eventually caught Max after a raft of virtual safety cars for debris and all kinds of stuff. And he eventually caught Max. He made a move with Max running Lewis wide off the track. And, Max said he wasn't sure why he got a penalty and Lewis didn't because they both went off track. It's a little sus because, he slid towards Lewis, tried to brake, slid toward Lewis, forcing them both to take, evasive action and go off the track. So arguably, had Max not slid into the corner with loads of opposite lock trying to catch the rear end of his car, Lewis may not have went off the track, to avoid that. So anyway, that happened. Before we get into the altercation where they came together, Paul, that corner right there, a lot of people say, he just drove him off the track. I don't know that was anything untoward. I don't think Max went in there just to spear Lewis off the track.
No.
I think he went in super hot, though, outbraked himself, was trying to catch the back of that car. You could see all the opposite lock he had on.
Yeah. I mean, he's got to go for it, and he got it wrong. Lewis is very smart, though. I tell you, Lewis has kept himself out of trouble and kept himself gaining by being super smart and super aware of where everyone is and when to give it up and when to force it. Max doesn't quite have that yet, I think he's learning a lot of lessons this year. We'll see how
he is learning.
up. But you can't try and neuter these kind of attempts. I mean, I get that he got it wrong, and because he got it wrong, he should be penalized for it, if not by his position that he ends up having from making a mistake. But you definitely can't gain an advantage but just by bonsaiing into a corner and say, everyone get out of my way. And I don't think that was, and I don't think it was certainly not as bad as Brazil, not even close to it. I think he was trying to make the corner and he really did kind of lose it. I mean, I think he's learning those lessons a little bit. As I said, he's still got a little bit to learn what really is possible. But who knows what's possible? I mean, you got two of the best drivers in the whole world fighting for a world championship. Exactly. If anyone going to try the impossible, it's one of those two guys. And so, and that's what Max is doing. He's trying to make something happen. I think he feels a bit on a back foot with his car's performance compared to the Mercedes cars. And so he has to, once again, pressurize. He has to try and do something different. He has to mix it up because he can't just jump in a car, drive around someone with a DRS zone and drive away. He can't do that in the car that he's driving. So he's got to try and do something. So he tried it. It went wrong. Lewis, smart cookie that he is, got out of the way, and they all went on. And that's
racing, man.
It's hard racing. And I don't think it's, I've seen a lot of people say the crazy Dutchman, right? I think he's aggressive and he's doing what he needs to do to try and win a world championship. And I can't fault him for it, but not saying he's faultless, right? So he's making mistakes.
No.
Things are happening, but he's trying to win championship, man.
He is. He's trying to win a championship in a car that is slower than the Mercedes. Lewis has a far better car.
does.
and that's the reality. And so it reminds me a little bit, Paul. You remember, let's see, 98, 99. You remember Schumacher in an inferior car to the McLaren against Mika, just driving his backside off, taking
Right.
massive risk, throwing it into the corners, trying everything he could. He was so close to the McLaren, but the McLaren was just that much better, you know?
Yeah.
And it was everything you could do to try to make that. And that's kind of where Max is right now. He's in a car that is slower than the Mercedes. The Mercedes can eat him up on the straights. He knows it. You look at that pace he had in Sector 1, it was mind-boggling how fast he was in Sector 1, and that's what Christian alluded to before Damon Hill, slapped him around. But that's what he was trying to say is that they were hoping that that first sector was enough, and ultimately it wasn't. Now, Max was instructed to give that position back and at a tactical place, and it was coming up to that DRS, right?
Yep.
Max knew that. Red Bull knew that. So did Lewis. Okay. Look, everyone that says Lewis was totally confused, didn't know what was going on. You are just insulting the intelligence of that guy. He's a 7-time world champ. He knew damn well where that DRS line was and what was going to happen. And he wasn't about to pass Max then to get mugged like he did to Kimi in 08 at Spa. He wasn't going to do that. Lewis didn't want to do that, right? So Max slows down, and so did Lewis. And Lewis tucked in behind Max. And Max, said maybe he was frustrated because he was trying to get Lewis to go around him.
Yeah.
Max hits the brakes or whatever it was, considerably slows down even more. That caught Lewis off guard. Lewis took avoiding action, clipped his front wing on Max's car, causing damage to the end plate. Hats off to the Mercedes carbon fiber division, by the way, for making
What a front wing those guys had.
That front wing is amazing. So then you get all these accusations of brake checking or brake testing, Lewis, and those accusations are rampant, but that's all speculation in my mind. Max was intent on making Lewis pass him at that spot. So when Lewis tucked in behind Max, Max hits the brakes to try to get Lewis to go around. And that caught Lewis off guard. They both knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
But for that, Paul, the stewards give Max a 10-second penalty for the effort. And then all the pundits, that's all they needed to see was the steward say, oh, yeah, he hit the brakes. And then people are saying, well, that's right. You never brake on the straight. And anyone braking, that's all BS. There's plenty of braking on a straight for various reasons. But perhaps, Paul, what you don't do is maybe brake quite so hard when the car's right behind you, maybe even out of frustration.
Yeah.
But as you also have to be heads up enough to anticipate those moves. And I say that, Paul, because Lewis Hamilton hit the brakes and slowed dramatically at Baku, and the world said Sebastian Vettel was wrong. And being a 4-time champ, you should be anticipating, that much better than he did. And he shouldn't have, it's up to Lewis to set the pace. And Sebastian just wasn't heads up. And, he hit the back of him. And as a 4-time champ, that's very unbecoming. And he should have been driving much better with much better spatial awareness. And that was his fault.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a different situation because they were coming up to do a restart, right?
A restart behind a safety car, but still, he came out of the corner, accelerated, then hit the brakes.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, I think, that, as you say, I think everyone knows what was going on. Even in the interviews between the teams, there's so much going on underneath that you guys aren't even seeing because they're playing so many games out there. On the warm-up laps. I was seeing some games going up there on the restart warm-up laps when Lewis was doing. It's like that's part of the game and part of this is real big boy stuff, right?
That is.
And there's no rule says you can't strategically give the place back. It doesn't say where or how or when, just give it back. He slowed down. There was enough room. Any other day, if Lewis had, if Max had missed a gear back in the days when you could miss a gear and Max's car slows down, Lewis is in tune with exactly what's going on and would just go around him. Just pass him. Lewis he knew exactly what was going on. He slowed down, but yes, when Max braked after, still waiting for Lewis to go by. That was because obviously Lewis didn't want to run in the back of Max. I mean, it would have been you know, it was a very dangerous, you know, thing for him to get through it, but he got out of it somehow, you know.
Yeah,
So
miraculously.
the strength of that rope. Wing.
Yeah.
But they were both playing city buggers. And, you know, they laid it all on Max's plate, and I just don't see it. It's like, hey, he said he was going to let him by. The car slowed down, even if he didn't know it was going to, if no one had told him to go by Max, he would have gone by instantly if the car had slowed down for a technical issue. So Lewis was purposely slowing down because he didn't want to, as you said, be tripping the DRS zone, and knew exactly what the ramifications was going to be. So they're both playing city buggers, so they both kind of deserve to crash out, quite honestly. But this is the rules that there is no rule about. So
yeah, right.
Are they telling you can't go slow? No one's telling you can't slow down. You know, they can tell you can't go fast in the pit lane, but no one's saying you can't go slower than is your maximum at any point in the race. So yeah, it was just a little cat and mouse game that ended up a bit of a cropper, you know, and could have ended even worse. But for Lewis, he came out smelling like roses. But to blame, just put it all on Max, I'm just not buying it, and I don't. Yeah, I don't know what they're trying to sell, but that definitely wasn't what I was buying anyway.
No, and immediately you've got Sky, you know, commentary and Crowley. Oh, he's brake checking, and he's like, oh, dude, wait a minute. Lewis tucked in behind him and does not want to pass him because of the DRS. That's exactly what's going on.
I mean, if he was going down the straight and Lewis is behind him and he jammed the brake, that's one thing. But they'd already slowed to half pace at this point.
They both geared down.
Yes.
Yeah.
They both
and
did.
the other thing is, Paul, let's just rewind that. They come around a corner, and let's say that Max had an engine failure, hydraulic failure, and instantly all of a sudden lost power, starts to slow down. If Lewis came around and saw Max slowing dramatically, he'd go around him in a heartbeat.
That's it. Yeah. So, as I said, it's
in a heartbeat.
He's fully aware of the speed differentials and where the speed should be, and driving at full pace. He just chose not to go that way. And
that's right.
That's why they ended up slowing themselves into a crash.
That was Lewis's choice to slow up and not immediately go around.
Yeah.
Knowing that Max was slowing up ahead of the DRS to give him the position back. He knew it. He's a 7-time champ. Don't insult this guy's intelligence. That's what he was trying to do. Now, as Paul said, luckily he came out smelling like roses. It could have ended in tears for Lewis, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And it caught him off guard because brake hit, because he hit the brakes trying to get him to go around. So it's a lesson for Max as well. But then, as you said, then they launch into this whole screed and total, and this is the politics of Formula One. This is what makes it fun. But it's fun from afar, but then to watch the social media just lose its collective mind over this, and just the bile and everything is unbelievable. But all these accusations about Max driving Lewis wide off the track, and while I agree, Max drove as if he had less to lose if there was a clash, and he did.
Yeah,
he does. Yeah, he does. They both drove hard. I mean, they both drive hard. Just ask Alex Albon. Lewis drove him off twice, right? Ask Pastor Maldonado, who Lewis drove off in 2012 at the European Grand Prix, or the year before at Monaco. They drive hard. That's what they do. What you're seeing, in my mind, is a 7-time champ whose racecraft includes numerous weapons, and he knows how to ebb and flow with a race.
Yep.
For Max, this is a lesson, and he races hard at all times. And when you're fighting in a complete season, it may not always be best to be at 100% attack at all times, right? There's some elegance, some nuance to a situation, and to approach it with a little more elegance, just as Lewis did this weekend. Even when Lewis eventually got by Max, hell, he ran him off the road.
Yeah.
And nobody said anything. There was no penalty for that.
Yeah, Massey got right on the bell and said,
whatever. Yeah.
Can you tell your driver not to do that next time?
Yeah, don't do that next time. Well,
he's already 10 seconds in the lead, so don't worry about it.
But it's Lewis knowing the game, knowing the chess match, right? And when they were gridding up again, like I said, for the second, Lewis held way back and left Matt sit there on cold tires. And then Mercedes, when they're going to double stack, Valtteri running the wingman, held Max way back. It's all a chess game. Yep. And it's brilliantly executed by Mercedes and Lewis in full command in a better car. And that's the reality of what we're looking for. To to launch into Lewis knows what he's doing, and he's not as innocent as everyone is making this out to be. He's a 7-time champ because he's a ruthless bugger, and
Yeah.
that tends to be a common theme amongst world champions in F1, folks.
Yeah, and don't fall for the verbiage that these people are using. They're not going to sit there and go, "Yes, well, I knew that was going."
They're not
You
gonna say
admit
that.
guilt at your peril, right? So they're going to play the innocent game and
Of
all that. But
course.
there is no innocence amongst any of them, quite honestly.
No.
But that's the game. Yeah.
No, these guys are apex predators, guys.
Mhm.
They go after. Look, as Nico showed in 2016, you have got to get your elbows out to beat Lewis Hamilton. And to be honest, the Merc is just a faster car. So Max is trying to win a title in a car that is slightly slower than the Merc. And, the Merc is armed, Lewis is armed with a quicker car. He's going to make it very hard for Max. So he's got to be aggressive as Nico was. And Nico was in equal equipment. Max is in slightly inferior equipment.
Yeah.
So you got to do that in order to beat anything Max can do to disrupt what Lewis wants to happen is what he's got to do.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. And he knows, and Lewis knows every time that if Max is right there, he's going to give it a go. So Lewis has to be aware and drive accordingly, which
That's right.
takes a little power away from Lewis,
Yep.
But Lewis is doing an impeccable job too. I mean, he really has.
Oh my gosh.
All
It was a
season. I
great
mean,
race.
it's like they both are driver very elevated, from where they've ever been. And I think, Lewis didn't always have the best car, but now he does, and he's maximized it ever since, they've turned that switch on. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. For the other two drivers, Red Bull, you had Sergio Perez at DNF, P2, Valtteri Bottas in P3. Sergio had a tough quali, even tougher race. He clashed with Charles Leclerc's Ferrari on the first restart, ended up at the wall and out of the race, and that brought out the second red flag. But for Valtteri, had a bad restart. Locked up, Esteban got around him, locked up, sent him back to the midfield. He had a great battle, a good scrap with Dan Ricciardo, actually. That was going on quite a bit. And we missed some of that. And eventually he clawed his way back onto the tailpipe of Esteban Ocon and left it to the last corner to engage in a drag race off the corner and across the line, pipping him for third place. And it was unfortunate the TV cameras didn't pick up that whole battle because that was a great battle.
That was. I went back and watched the in-car for the last 3 laps of Bottas to see that run. And on the last lap, Bottas actually went off, trying to pass Ocon out, braked himself, got back on, didn't gain an advantage, apart from not crashing into a tree, right? And got back on and then got to fight Ocon later on in the lap. I mean, Bottas was on the same tyre strategy as Verstappen, right? But that just shows you how good the Mercedes was, because he was going. And it's interesting. Bottas has done this. I mean, we've seen him have some stinkers of races, but then also we've seen him be very patient and then just come alive in the last 10 laps and make a lot of gains. Trying to figure out what's going on there. I'm assuming he's just driving a heady race and protecting his tires and just having getting the life out of the tires right at the end to make a lot of passes, because he was very patient. He wasn't going anywhere, and then all of a sudden he got by Ricciardo, I think. Was it Ricciardo that kind of unleashed it, and then he's just started knocking off guys lap after lap. So it was impressive race by Valtteri, actually, and a good comeback from where he's been the past few races. And we know Toto appreciated it.
I was just gonna say, I think it's the headset breaking Toto Wolff radio call to him. Come on, piss him! He was pissed off, wasn't he?
But it just showed you how good that car really was.
Yeah, it did.
What he was able to do those last few laps, Valtteri.
That's how good the Merc is. I maintain it's 2-3 tenths a lap quicker than Red Bull at this point. And that's really hard to overcome. So kudos. And I think Christian's right. Whether they win the title or not, every single man and woman in that team at Red Bull have a lot to be proud of.
Oh yeah, I mean they've made one of the best seasons ever in Formula One. Apart from what we've seen in past seasons where it's we even knew which Mercedes was going to win, but it's phenomenal, the turnaround. So yeah, they should be very highly commended no matter what happens at the next race.
Yeah, no doubt. Alpine, Fernando Alonso, P13, Esteban Ocon, and P3. Alpine
P4.
Was it P4? Sorry. Yeah,
Yep.
P4. Alpine was so close to scoring their second podium in as many races, but Esteban was pipped right at the line in a drag race with Bottas, had to settle for fourth. Esteban had gotten himself contention by not boxing and then retaining track position. And at the restart, he passed Bottas, who locked up, and then he passed Lewis, who had to run wide, and got up there. And Esteban said, "Well, he's restarted on pole position." After race control shuffled Max backwards, and he said, "Wow, starting in pole position was great. I hadn't done that since the GP3 days." So he was pretty excited to do that. He said that he knew that they were going to race each other hard, Max and Lewis, but he wasn't expecting them to be so aggressive with him.
Give a damn about him? No, they didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
So Lewis, literally, hit Esteban into turn one. So he was kind of like, "Yeah, I expected them to be aggressive with each other, not with me."
Yeah.
But they were. But it was a great result for Esteban. It's just a heads-up race in an Alpine, no less, and to finish, holding that Merc back was never on the cards. But yeah, it was a great
It was
race.
tough. He nearly pulled it off, but I think
Nearly
he just
did.
he ran out of juice on that last lap.
Yeah.
Honestly, it seemed like it. Yeah, just coming out of that last corner, I think, I was like, okay, I'm going to ride with Esteban and see what he could have done to hold Bottas off,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't figure anything out. He could have done. I was like, you should have parked him in that last corner, but he really didn't have that option. He was covering the inside. That's all he could do coming
Yeah.
off. And I think, Valtteri smartly had saved up his power, and he just kind of zinged by him. So good for him. And yeah, but Esteban did drive a fantastic race for sure.
Yeah, great race.
Yeah.
Fernando, not so much. Tough race. I don't know exactly what happened. He spun by himself about halfway through the race. Kind of sort of unforced error, spun by himself. That put him back out of the points and never did claw his way back. So
Yeah, no, he did. Yeah, Ocon had his match by a ways. It wasn't even close. And yeah, I was expecting more from Alonso at this kind of track. I would have thought be something like his Tiger Instinct would have got, but yeah, something didn't match with the balance of his car, and he was just struggling.
yeah. I mean, I didn't really notice because most of the race I was like,
What does it all mean, Bansler?
it's like, what the heck is going on? Let's see, McLaren, Lando Norris P10, Daniel Ricciardo, a great P5 for him. Lando started on the softs. That didn't really look like that was going to play out really well, but it was good because that first safety car came out and they thought, all right, hey, here's a chance. I got a safety car, I can get off these softs, get onto a realistic set of tires, but he lost out, Paul. That red flag came out after that, got caught out by the safety car in the red flag. That put him towards the back. He did have a decent race to recover to 10th for a point. That's not worth writing home to mom about, but it's a shame because I felt like if he could have been up there, he'd been a little bit more in the mix of it, but it just didn't go his way.
Nope, certainly didn't. Yeah, he pitted, I guess, before the red flag. So he was one of the big losers out of that one. And
there were a few.
Yeah, but Dan had a great run though. He was holding on tough for sure.
Yeah. Well, he started on the hards, and then he didn't box, and he was running up in fourth for a portion of the race.
Track position is king.
It is king in this track for sure. And then he had that great battle with Bottas, and great weekend to finish fifth. Even though he got beat up on social media because he said he didn't watch the news apparently, and I guess maybe a lot of people weren't happy with that because he wasn't up on the cultural and political side of things.
Hey man, not everyone has to be.
No,
I mean,
no. It's not, not his gig, he's not interested in all of that. He's probably interested in other things like IPAs, Paul, a good nice stiff IPA. Or something. Anyway, great race for Dan.
It was
really good
great.
race.
Yeah.
Alpha Tauri, Pierre Gasly in P6, Yuki Tsunoda in P14. Pierre didn't get a great start at the beginning, Paul. He lost out lost a few places at the beginning. And it was unfortunate because I thought he had a great qualifying performance. And then he kind of drifted backwards. However, that restart completely launched, had a good start, opportunity to correct that. He did correct that first start, got a much better start in the second, got back to sixth. That's where he finished. But oddly, with all the chaos going on around him, it was just a quiet race to sixth for him.
Yeah, quite race, which is great because they had a stinker of a race last time, so they needed to do something. The car actually looked pretty lively and good.
It did.
It really did. It was running good in practice and qualifying, all that kind of stuff. So it was actually, I think, it's a bit of a downer that they weren't able to beat McLaren at this track. Actually, I think they probably were expecting that. But Tsunoda was even had good pace too, but he
on Saturday
once again he yuki'd himself a couple of times in the race, and that was the end of that. That was an awful move on Sebastian.
Oh my god!
Oh, come on, Yuki, man! You said you were going to change things, but that was a big bad move right there. And then Seb really had to paid for it as well.
Seb totally did. Yeah, that was unfortunate. But, he had that tussle, lost his nose, then he limped it back to the pits for a new nose and a penalty, and so that wasn't good.
No.
So anyway, Ferrari, Charles Leclerc P7, Carlos Sainz P8, a bit of an enigma. Thought maybe Ferrari do a little better than this weekend. Pretty fast circuit. Carlos, again, had a tough qualifying session. Not quite sure what's going on there. Charles was running in fourth. He got caught out by the safety car, Paul, because he had boxed. Then he got caught out by the safety car. Charles got tangled up then with Perez on the first restart.
Oof, yeah, that was tough.
That dropped him back a little into the clutches of his teammate. Then they themselves had a good battle between them going on. That incident between Perez and Leclerc, how did you see that?
It was a racing incident. Unfortunately, he got Leclerc's kind of got stuck where he was. There wasn't much he could do at that point once the pinch came in.
Yeah,
he couldn't really back off because that was probably going to cause even more incidents.
Yeah.
So he kind of had to stick there and hope Perez somehow found some room on the right to stick it out there. And I don't know if Perez couldn't move, give him more room, or wasn't fully aware that Charles was there. I can't lay blame on anyone there. Everyone's fighting, for every slot they get. And I don't think it was any kind of big error by either of them. It's just a bad luck of the cards, I would say.
Yeah. Well, he lived to fight and did finish in P7. Carlos Sainz had a tough Saturday, as I mentioned, starting on the hard, not boxing during the safety car meant that he did come up through the field, got a big gain on that, got up to where his teammate was fighting with Charles for P7. So he did recoup, get up into the points. In the end, they both came home with the points, but behind a McLaren and an AlphaTauri, probably okay, but not what they were hoping for. But even though I still think they look good for that best of the rest position.
Yeah. Wasn't astounding, but it
wasn't a disaster either. Yeah.
Wasn't a disaster either, for sure.
Aston Martin, Lance Stroll P11, Sebastian Vettel DNF, a complete reversal of how they finished 2 weeks ago, right? So you had Lance with a DNF and Seb in P11, so now it's reversed.
Ooh, twinsies.
Yeah, they're twinsies. They're like this, Lance and Seb.
Yeah, they are.
It seemed like everyone that felt like they'd like to hit Sebastian had plenty of opportunity to do so during this race. You had Yuki drawing first blood, and then Kimi finishing him off by taking off the right side of his car. I don't know what that was all about. And it's like Seb was like, you get so frustrated. He was like, oh, really, come on, guys, what the heck? It was like. He was not happy.
Pretty much, yeah. It was bad. He was a punching bag out there, unfortunately. Yeah, he was driving fine, but they took it all out on him.
Lance lost out during the safety car. He was one of the losers, fought his way back to 10th, couldn't hang on to 10th. Lando was quicker than his McLaren, and he dropped to 11th. Alfa Romeo, speaking of Kimi Räikkönen, P15, Antonio Giovinazzi, a P9 for Gio. He had a good race. He lost place to Ricciardo at the start, but he gained from the safety car. He was able to run up in the points, avoiding the chaos all around him. He couldn't hold off both Ferraris, but still finished P9. Once again, day late, dollar short for his career in F1 for next year, but it was a good race.
He's got Formula E. He's super excited, I'm sure.
Oh, well, who wouldn't be?
Yeah. No, it was good. He made a couple of good passes in the race, etc. But I mean, it's not like he's going to be allowed to stay in front of the Ferraris anyway. So
no, yeah, right, right.
But I don't think he could have either way. But
yeah, I don't think so either. Kimi a bit chippy out there, wasn't he? Bouncing off Seb, had to come in and get a new front wing, dropped him out of the points. The old man's not going quietly.
I mean, he's he's got 2 races left. He just wants to race people, I think, he was out there. It was pretty close.
Yeah, it was.
To not having anything happen really, but those walls, the cars move around a little bit, and Seb was the punching bag, but I don't know. Kimmy's just having fun out there, honestly.
What does he
hell?
care?
He doesn't.
Yeah. Let's see. Williams, George Russell at DNF, Nicholas Latifi at P12. George got clouded from behind by Mazepin, who couldn't get stopped quick enough as they all hit the brakes to avoid the Perez-Leclerc clash, and that ended George's race. He also didn't like the track and thought it was dangerous. And then Nick couldn't take advantage of all the carnage ahead of him to get into the points, so not a great race to memorialize Sir Frank, really.
No, not the. You'd expect them to be doing anything super great here. I mean,
Yeah.
aero is very important to this track, and I don't think Williams are quite in that vein right now.
Yeah. There was a Damon Hill telling Christian, well, you brought, a lot more downforce, and Christian's like, no, we didn't bring a lot more. We brought less, actually. It's like he and Dave, Christian
Buddies
and Damon.
too, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking no love lost there. I don't know. Damon is like, wow, dude. Boy, he's like, knows what everybody's intentions were, and it's not adding much to the broadcast there.
No.
Very frustrating to listen to as a fan. Anyway, Haas F1, Mick Schumacher, DNF, Mazepin, DNF. Mick hit the wall, Nikita hit Russell, and the team may not have enough parts for Abu Dhabi. Enough said.
Ooh, really?
I don't know. They were worried about their spare parts.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's tough. Back to the Caterham days.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
It's
Just one more race, guys. Come on. Get
just
the Bondo
one
out.
more race. Surely you've got enough. Do you? Yeah. Anyway, there you go. All right, let's give some awards, shall we? We always hand out some awards. First one is Move the Race. Woo! That's right, Lewis. Get in there. All right, Move the Race. Who'd you have?
I'm giving it to Max Verstappen for that 3 abreast pass on the inside of Lewis and Ocon.
Yeah, that's who I had.
Great move.
As an alternate, I put Ocon and everyone who didn't box during the safety car because they all gained massively.
Yeah,
So
that was easiest pass they'll ever make.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's who I had. All right, next award is what is it? What is the next award? Donkey of the race.
We'll do it live.
All right, Donkey of the race. Who'd you give it to?
I'm giving it to Max and Lewis for, for that whole mess. They're both got equal parts to play in it, and it looked a little foolish and a little amateurish, and they were both lucky to come out of it unscathed. Well, relatively unscathed, should I say?
Yeah, that's good. It's a good shout. I'm going to give it to Sky Sports, Damon and Simon. My gosh, dude, tone it down. Tone the bias down a little bit. I mean, my gosh, that was. I mean, I understand emotions are high and the drama and the excitement and the adrenaline's going, but good grief. My gosh, just tone it down.
They got so many
a little
people
bit.
in that broadcast. It's mind-boggling.
I know. They've got like
honestly.
a phalanx of people on that broadcast.
They gotta have their own jet, I think, their own private charter to fly just the XF1 team. I haven't seen Johnny Herbert recently, have you?
Yeah, where is JH? I haven't seen him either. Hope he's doing all right.
Yeah, I hope he's all right. Yeah.
But so then you got them that's like over the top, the bias is just, they're steeped in it. And then you've got Martin and Ant and PDR, I think they're pretty gobsmacked about some of the things coming out of their mind. They're like, you see PDR in the post race, they're standing there with Damon and Simon and Damon are just like, "Rawr," going after Christian. And PDR's like, what the hell, guys? And they kept throwing it to him. It's like, I don't know, whatever. It's like, guys, we're trying to be objective here,
Yeah.
it's a little crazy. So anyway, that's my donkey of the race. All right, well then that's the last award, which is drive of the race.
Get down. Lewis. Get down.
That's right, Toto. Get down.
I'm gonna give it to Lewis Hamilton.
Good shout. He had a great race.
As I said, I mean, he's got Max Verstappen biting his ankles all the time, but he's making really good decisions under that pressure. And the donkey award aside, and then driving with the car with the broken wing and being able to pull the speed that he could out of it was pretty impressive. Obviously,
Yeah.
aided by a very good car, but yeah, he's literally extracting everything
Oh,
every
for sure.
second around that track. I mean, you see him when he was following Max, and the car's kind of moving around with the aero wash, but he's sticking with it and knowing where the positives are on the car, that he's going to gain that back, but didn't give it up. And it's kudos to the team too for building a car that can take
Oh
that
my gosh,
abuse
yes.
lap after lap in dirty air, which the cars don't really like, but they've found a way to get around it right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And the other thing is, look, Max is driving with his elbows out, and by God, he's got to. He's driving in a slower car. He's trying to win a championship, and he's got to drive with his elbows out. And you have to beat to unseat Lewis Hamilton. But Lewis is doing an amazing job of driving around those elbows.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So
yes, Max got his elbows out, and I think fair play, he's got to. And I think Lewis is doing an incredible
he's the
job.
best
of driving
Frogger
around.
player in F1.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, good job. I'm going to give it to Esteban.
Okay.
Because when all the nuclear weapons were going off around him, he still managed to hang on and bring that Alpine home in fourth, making life hard for Valtteri in a much better car. Valtteri's a much better car. So I thought it was a great race by Esteban.
For sure.
Yes.
For sure. Good for him.
Yes. All right. Let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
Miles asks, how does a driver help develop the car? Is there more to it than their feedback for driving? What does a driver do when they stay late with the mechanics, like the Schumacher documentary said?
I'm not sure. So we'll go back to the stay late thing. Are you talking about stay late with the mechanics or staying
Yes.
late with the engineers?
Probably he means staying late with the mechanics and the team as they're working on the car.
Yeah. I mean that's just rallying the team behind you to make everyone give that extra effort, because a lot of drivers do a lot of different things. Some of them leave,
Yep.
and then the guy's just going to do his job and then go home. But if you've got Michael Schumacher there going and getting you a cup of tea and everything, you're going to be making that extra mile. When Michael on the track, before the races, did everything to be prepared to get every last little bit out of the car. And this is part and parcel of it, right? You got to have the car to actually be extracting that out of, and the mechanics are the guys that are kind of holding your baby in their hands. And so it just says a lot about a person that they're fully committed to what they're trying to achieve that weekend. They don't need to go out to their fancy dinner, they'd rather be here. They're fully committed, and every team member appreciates that.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Now, what does a driver help to develop a car? I mean, every driver has such different feedback. You'd be astonished that the engineers can try and figure out what everyone's saying. Certainly on a multi-driver, one car team, everyone's got their opinion, right? And they're not always the same opinion. So the engineers have to extract the information that the drivers are giving them. You can look at data, say, well, it's understeering here, but why is it understeering here? What are you doing in the car? What are you feeling sometimes? It's if the car's giving you back a certain feedback, then the driver's going to react to that feedback. So sometimes the engineers have to extract what the actual driver's feeling, not just actually what's happening in the lead up to a point in the corner or the exit. So they can try and bleed some of that down and give the driver confidence to get the most out of the vehicle, because sometimes the driver can actually do something to the detriment of speed because of what they're feeling, or whether it's a real feeling or not in the car. So the engineer has to build a car that gives the best feedback to the driver to extract the best performance out of the car. So, I mean, sometimes depending on drivers like Ian James, who have a big engineering background, some drivers are just natural drivers. So they can all help develop the car, but the engineer has to approach it very differently in how they receive the information and how they then use all that data and transpose that to what to change on the car.
Right. And in terms of, you could have both cars, let's say, set up, pretty much identical, and you could put both drivers, but how much, there's so many variables, right, Paul? How much throttle is the driver giving, and when is he giving the
Right.
throttle? How much brake pressure is he pushing, and when? How much steering input, and where? And all those subtle nuances that each driver is different. Valtteri is different from Lewis, right?
Right.
Some drivers like a pointy car, some don't. And it's got to be equally, even more difficult when, like on your team, when you've got the number 23 Aston Martin and 3 drivers in it. So the car is exactly the same car that all 3 drivers are getting in.
Right. You
Get
can't.
out and tell you a different story.
Yeah, you can't break apart and go there because, as you say,
Yeah.
everyone's got their own style, and
Yeah.
you go to racing school and there's the apex and there's the turning point and lift off the brake, but
Right.
everyone's got their own just little thing, how they turn the input, how they release the brake, and you have to dial the car into their style as much as just what's best for the car. So it's a process for sure, and the driver's integral, even up to Formula One, but in the lower ranks even more important because they don't have as much data as they do at Formula One in knowing the driver actually has more influence on the engineering of the car. And if they've got experience, like Ross with Aston Martins all around the world, well, this worked and this didn't work.
Right.
How about this? So yeah, it's great to be in those meetings. And yeah, the driver has a big part to play in it, no matter where he's at. Because as I said, it's not just about aero, we've got this much rake and that's gives the car that much speed. The driver still has to actually make that work for him, and so they have to really work to get the car up to that point where it works with their style. And sometimes the driver has to adapt style to what the car wants as well.
Daniel Ricciardo at
Sometimes,
McLaren.
right? Yeah, that does happen. But the engineers the driver and the engineer really have to work very hard together back and forth to figure that solution out.
Right. And to that point, and you make a great point about conforming your style to the car. Miles, sometimes you'll hear this say, well, that Red Bull was basically made for Max Verstappen.
Mm-hmm.
Max drives a particular way, and he likes a car a particular way. And because he's the number one driver and all their money's behind him, Adrian Newey's going to design that car to flatter the way that Max drives. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when another driver like Perez comes in, Albon comes in, Gasly comes in, they may not drive like Max. And so when they come in, that makes that chassis really difficult to drive for them because they don't drive. Dan Ricciardo at McLaren is a perfect example. Albon at Red Bull is another good example. Sergio, good example of he came in, struggled first 5 or 6 races, but you're seeing this progression of him get a little better and a little better, a little better with that car. But he is being asked to conform to that car.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the focus is going to be on who can get you the most success, and for Red Bull, it's Max. So if he likes a pointy car, that car's going to be pointy, and there's only so far in the re-engineering of the car that can be allowed to get it to suit Sergio.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So I hope that it's a great question, though, Miles.
Yeah, very good.
Let's see, Daniel Archambault. I probably butchered that last name, but that's a super cool last name, Daniel. He says, why are drivers allowed to change their tires and also work on damage during red flag session? It's my understanding that other series such as NASCAR and IndyCar don't allow this. This rule gives a huge advantage to drivers who haven't pitted yet and can change their tires during red flag and losing in position of the track. What's the reason for allowing this? So this...
Safety? What?
Yeah, safety. Yeah, exactly. So this, if memory serves, so a few years ago, Daniel, this played a big role in a Monaco Grand Prix, and I don't remember if it was Lewis that benefited from it, Sebastian, or Daniel. I can't remember. I'm getting old, Daniel, and I cannot remember. It was one of those guys ended up being the real benefit. It could have been Seb or Lewis. Anyway, and they had just sort of changed some of the regulations before that, and it was the first time it really kind of came up and was so glaring that it had such a massive impact because it was late in the race and they were hunting the leader down. I think, gosh, I want to say it was Seb, but they were hunting the leader down on worn red tires, and the red flag came out, got to put on brand new tires and walked it, and won. And they just, it impacted the race. But that's what they did, this rule, and they set that up for safety reasons that they could come in and change pieces and change tires on the car.
Right.
And so I think comprehensively most people dislike this rule. Daniel, because it does exactly what it just allowed for. Now, it's the same for everyone, though. It's the same for everyone, and everyone can either benefit from it or get caught out. Some benefit,
Right.
some don't. But
And
it
if the
is
rule
the
wasn't
same.
there and you are the guy with the 20 lap old tires and everyone just came in and pitted, then you're the one on the
Yeah.
back foot. Once again, not your fault that the race got stopped.
Right.
So I think they do it to neutralize everything, plus a safety thing. If there's a big enough accident or something to stop the race, then let's everyone put new tires on so there's no
No
flat tires, all
debris.
that kind of
Yeah.
good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, carbon fiber people may have driven through in that accident. They don't
Exactly.
want cut down tires, those kind of things. So anyway, yeah, it's one of those regulations that when it happens and it impacts people's races, lots of fans get upset about it, but it is the same for everyone. Ian Bell asks, is it time for someone to sit Max down and lay down the law? Enough is enough. This crash or pass attitude is getting both silly and dangerous. Well, Ian, I certainly understand your point. I don't know that I see it exactly the same way that you do on this side. I think we've made the case pretty clear in our review in this podcast that Max has got his elbows out. He is attack mode 100%. Every single driver on that grid knows that about Max. He's not going to give a quarter. That's just not how he's wired. He attacks at all times. That's what he does. You could argue, well, it's just dangerous driving. I didn't see this massive, dangerous driving this weekend. I saw him slow down in the straight. I saw Lewis playing games, tucking in behind him and refusing to pass him. I saw Max get frustrated, hit the brakes. Lewis, caught Lewis off guard and he hit the wing. But it's not like I think he's out there trying to kill people. He's out there trying to win. He's aggressive. That's what he does.
Yeah.
I don't know, Paul. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he's not like Lewis, where he's not as mature in his racecraft abilities, and so it's a bit raw.
Right. It's
But
raw. I agree.
But I don't think he's doing so many things egregious that he's like the mad Dutchman, just to crash or nothing, because he really hasn't. I mean, they've had incidents, but a lot of people have had incidents, through there. A lot of great drivers have had incidents trying to win world championships,
Yes.
and it's, the pressure's on and this is his opportunity. So I really can't fault him for it. And I think some of the penalties we saw this week were okay because they were cutting corner penalties and, but the actual aggression, I don't really have a big problem with. And I think, I said a little error seems to be blown up into a massive, he's trying to kill everybody. But, and I think in the past he has made some bad decisions.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Which has ended in contact. But right now it's, there's a lot of games going on both sides. So it's not just Max just trying to beat up on Lewis. I think they're stirring the pot each other pretty royally, I would say, at this point. So
yeah, I think maybe I'm not trying to patronize you, Ann, at all on this. I totally understand your point. I think a lot of people have made Max a villain. Predominantly Lewis Hamilton fans. I think they've made him a villain out of this. Like he's out trying to kill people. It's not what he's doing. He's an aggressive driver, but that's not what he's doing. He's trying to win a championship against a guy in a better car, and that guy happens to be a 7-time champion. And
he's had, and he has had a bit of a leverage from what the points he earned in the championship and given him, a little advantage, which he could utilize to be a bit more aggressive than Lewis. Lewis couldn't afford to be aggressive. No. He still can't.
He can't.
If he
not even going to Abu Dhabi.
If Lewis needed to be aggressive, he would be aggressive. He has the ability. He knows what to do, and he knows how to do it just like Max does. Absolutely. But he's not in that position in the championship to do that. He had to finish the races. He had to keep winning. It wasn't like, and if someone's got that little leverage, then they're going to use it, because this is a serious professional championship and they're fighting for the world title. So.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to play for.
Yeah.
Okay. That does it for this podcast. Let us know what you guys think. about the race and share your opinion. You can do that. Go to theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion with decorum and civility as always. And also, hey, folks, if you guys didn't see, I posted this weekend a fantastic. So if you guys haven't been following Paul in his motorhome chat
me.
series, that's Paul Charsley over there, that guy. Paul, being the sporting manager of Harder Racing, does these interviews. And there's a series of them. I put them in their own playlist on our YouTube channel. And if you didn't catch the last one that I just dropped, it is with the boss of Heart of Racing, number 283, and Paul's longtime friend, Ian James, who himself is a mighty, awesome race car driver and the team boss of this team. And it is a terrific interview. And if you guys haven't seen that, make sure you go to our YouTube channel or our website and watch that. It's a fantastic interview. And we've had the honor, Paul set it up in the past to talk to Ian. I've met Ian 2 or 3 times and just super good guy. And I think you guys will really like that interview. So
Yeah, I think
make sure
so.
you check it out.
Yeah, definitely check it out. It's
And
good
all
stuff.
of them are there. If you haven't seen that series yet, go to our YouTube channel and go to the playlist tab, and you'll see Heart of Racing, and all of Paul's interviews are there, and they're fabulous with Roman and Darren and everybody. So go check those out. All right, Paul, we made it. We got one more race to go next week.
I don't get
Dhabi.
banned or
Yeah.
something before I get there. Yeah,
It's all or nothing.
it is all or nothing. It's
right.
crazy.
It
Equal
is
on
crazy.
points. Wow.
Nuts. The
been a
only
crazy
advantage
season.
Max has at this point is he's won more races.
Yep.
So there you go. So
Yep.
watch this space. All right, we'll be back next week to do it all over again. Until that time, this is Todd, aka Negative Gamer, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.